Hello everyone, I'm Jim Roller. Welcome to today's first episode of the Historic Racing News Icon Series. Sports car racing is experiencing what many are calling a third golden age of prototype competition. The rekindled GTP category in IMSA has brought a lot of manufacturer interest, great racing, and some welcome nostalgia for IMSA's original GTP or Grand Touring prototype category. Many think the original GTP concept saved sports car racing. How it came to be, and the car that put the category on the map, are the subject of today's inaugural Historic Racing News Icon Series episode. I hope you enjoy it.
GTP, the rules were out and published like the end of '79. People had built cars to these rules.
Carl system, and of course everybody's there. Ralph Cook, Roy Woods, Carl, everybody. Eric Broadley. Carl system, gets his cigarette in his mouth and goes, Brian, if this car doesn't win tomorrow, Lola cars are going bankrupt.
The late 1960s and early 70s were considered the golden age of prototype sports car racing. Battles between Porsche 917s, Ferrari 512s, and later Renaults and Porsche 936s were the stuff of legend. Then in the late 70s, rule changes and a distressed economy left production-based cars dominating the landscape. Porsche 935, BMWs, and Chevy Monzas overran the competition. By the end of the decade, however, factory priorities were changing again, and competitors were being left to fend for themselves when it came to car development.
The late '70s, the 935, the Group 5 GTX cars, which were spectacular. They spit flames, they did all the stuff you wanted to do, made weird noises, they were beasts to drive, great drivers driving them, good racing, all of the above. But the bottom line was, if you couldn't get one, you couldn't get one, and that was that. And there was no alternative for these other teams that wanted to race at the top levels. What kind of car can I get? But by 1980, they weren't even making them. You had to buy a 930 tub with an aluminum roll cage in it at the time. But those kind of cars were simply not available in the numbers that we felt were necessary to grow. And the other side of it was there was 5 variations of the same car, which was okay. You'd have a grid of 10 935s. No two of them would be the same because everybody hot-rodded them their own way, which was cool. That was part of the game.
Like the teams, organizers were forced to make changes or watch the field start to dwindle. John Bishop, whose IMSA organization governed the American sports car scene, and the ACO that oversaw Le Mans and with the FIA things in Europe, all teamed up and began developing a new prototype formula. Unfortunately, the groups could not agree. Then President of the FIA, Frenchman Jean-Marie Balès, strong-armed the ACO into adopting rules favoring a complicated fuel-saving formula known as Group C.
The ACO back then was essentially operated by 3 people. One sporting, one technical, and one communications. Those 3 guys made decisions. And they were still pretty autonomous, even though at the time Jean-Marie Balès was president of, and it's in that first book about a little bit of strong-arming, making them do something they didn't really want to do, which was Group C, or the fuel formula.
Bishop felt he needed strong fields to put on a good show in a competitive American sports entertainment market. To do that, he chose a simpler path. So simple, in fact, the rules were only 4 pages long, and he drew the original concept at his desk. And once that ball was rolling, he would not turn back.
We needed to come up with something where the engine in the car was generally available and anybody who wanted to and had the wherewithal could buy one and race one. It was a simple power to weight kind of scale.
Everybody kind of poo-pooed the concept of what we were doing, which was taking a relatively inexpensive, 650 horsepower, 6-liter GM motor and putting it in the back of a prototype car. What made the GTP car get different was the fact that it was a purpose-built race car, designed from the ground up to be a race car, not inhibited by the dimensions of a Porsche 911 or a Ford Mustang or a BMW 320.
Rules were out and published like the end of '79. So people like Lola and March, people had built cars to these rules. So for us to adopt another set of rules that made those cars obsolete or had to be changed wasn't really in our DNA. John Bishop wouldn't do anything like that. We made a commitment, we're going to live by our commitment.
Despite that unwavering commitment, early GTP entries were ad hoc Frankensteins like Jim Busby's Chevy V8-powered BMW M1, which debuted at Riverside in 1980. Even with the slow start, by the end of the 1980 season, there were purpose-built GTP cars in the design pipeline.
In 1980, while still racing occasionally, and I'm working for Carl Huss selling Lola racing cars, I read the new rules that IMSA had brought out for GTP. And so I said to Carl Huss, Lola can build a car to these new GTP rules with a Chevy engine that can win the championship. He said, go and see Eric Broadley.
Eric said, well, it's a bit tempting to build a modern T-70, but that's not the right way to go. We need to try and get some ground effects. So they built. And so I come back, before I left to come back to America, Eric said I need an order for 2 cars at $75,000 each. So I get to Carl, fully convinced, as the Lola importer, he'll order the cars. He said, I'm not ordering them. So he said, you find somebody to buy those first 2 cars, and I'll split the profit with them on the future models, etc. So I found Roy Woods and Ralph Cook, and they bought the first 2 cars.
At the 4th race of the 1981 IMSA Camel GT season at Riverside, California, purpose-built GTP cars were ready to race. The first to see action was the March BMW M1C, featuring an aluminum monocoque chassis and a 3.5-liter BMW power plant. The car was entered by BMW North America and featured drivers David Hobbs and Mark Schurer.
If you recall, the BMW guys had what was then the M1C, the Kenwood car, which was a one-of car, which was powered by the straight 6 motor at that time, the M1 motor. It wasn't fast enough. It didn't have enough power, basically, because of the tunnels and everything. It did have tunnels. So that was probably the first one, but it wasn't a customer car. It was a kind of a March experiment.
The new Lola Redman had nurtured along was entered, but the debut was pushed back to a shorter race a week later.
John Bright brought it to America and we tested it at Sears Point, and we actually took it to Riverside, but Riverside was a 6-hour race and this was a new car with a new gearbox, the VG, which nobody had tested. So we thought we'd run it first of all in a sprint race, and so this was Laguna Seca.
It showed up and everybody kind of looked at it and went, oh, that's pretty cool, but I don't think anybody visually took all the bits that were on it and how it looked and what it was going to do. It didn't really know how to translate that into what it was going to do in the racetrack.
On May 3rd, 1981, along with the BMW, there would now be 2 of the sleek new GTP cars. It was a classic battle of handling versus horsepower.
So we get there and the car's pretty good. We qualified 5th behind the 935s, but of course they can turn the boost up for short periods, which is what they do in practice, qualifying, and also for short periods in the race. They've got 800 horsepower, but they can't leave it there for very long, otherwise it blows up.
Could they sustain that advantage over a 100-mile sprint? The fate of a formula and a company would be determined by that answer.
Carl says to me, and of course everybody's there, Ralph Cook, Roy Woods, Carl, everybody, Eric Broadley. Carl says to me, he takes his cigarette in his mouth and goes, Brian, if this car doesn't win tomorrow, Lola cars are going bankrupt.
The race was covered at the time by a show called Fast Company. Here's some of how racer John Morton and the late Bruce Flanders described the battle that made history that day.
On the coast of California, between San Francisco and Los Angeles, is one of the prettiest places you'd ever want to be, Monterey, California. And it is the site of Laguna Seca Raceway, where the IMSA GT Challenge is happening. With me, John Morton. John, tell me about the field.
Well, on the pole is John Fitzpatrick in a Porsche. On the outside front row is John Paul, but there's the car to look at. That's Brian Redman's new Lola GT prototype. The maiden voyage for this car, it's qualified in 5th position, but look for it to do very well.
Porsches, Lolas, Mustangs, Camaros, Corvettes. We've got a lot of really wild race cars. And they are bunched tightly. The field's ready. The flagman ready. Look at Bobby Rahal in the dark car. A Texas start by Rahal as he tries to get everybody before the flag turns green. And it apparently does not work. Jumping out early into the lead with his headlights on is John Paul Jr. And running second, it looks like Fitzpatrick. Boy, that's a heck of a way to start a race.
Despite all the preparation, early on, Redman had an issue.
The trouble was about the 7th or 8th lap when I come into the very fast turn 1, taken in top gear. As I just backed off to drop the nose ready to turn, the car went like this. So, that's a loose wheel or a tyre. But it's a it's a 1 hour race, and so to pit that would have been it. So I kept going, and I dropped down to like 10th. Every lap I come in, it's just this. Anyway, after about 10 or 12 laps, it's okay.
Once Brian was confident the car was okay, it was time to go to the front.
And right now, there's 3rd place, the dark blue car. That's Bobby Rahal, the Porsche. And then the Cookwoods Lola. In fact, both of them are Cookwoods cars. It's Brian Redman in the Cookwoods yellow Lola running right behind him in 4th.
Redman has come a long way, dropped to 7th place on the first lap, and now he's trying for his teammate. There he goes to the inside, and it looks like he's got him. He's got his teammate Bobby Rahal.
Boy, with a beautiful move right there, too, as they come up on some slower traffic once again. And it is the Lola now in 3rd, and let's just see what that Lola can do. Brian Redman flat shoveling that Lola around this twisty snake of a racetrack.
He thinks the car can do it, and I think he may be able to do it. He's three-time Formula 5000 champion, and he's really on the move now. He hung back for a while, and then he just started picking off car after car. Now he's right on John Fitzpatrick's tail. That car is running 2nd, Redman in 3rd place, and he looks like he's got Fitzpatrick's mark, but we'll have to see if he can get by.
Some of the Porsche people are a little worried right now.
I'm sure it has. I imagine the hierarchy at Porsche has dreaded this day for a long time, and I think we're going to see the dawning of a new era, perhaps.
As the Lola is starting to make dents on the rear end of that Porsche. He wants by. And Brian Redman, when he wants by, is going to find a way.
It looks like he made it that time. Fitzpatrick looked like he moved over and let him have the inside right at the last second. And now Redman is in 2nd place. And now he's got one more guy to pass.
And that one more car is right there on your screen. That's John Paul Jr. out in front of it, smoothly out in front of it. But I would imagine that pit board signals are telling him now that there's a yellow Lola in pursuit. And in pursuit it is. Look at this race going on right now for the lead. These guys are battling.
There comes turn 9 again, the turn that Redman will probably attempt to pass. Here he's going. John Paul's fading to the outside again.
Ooh, nearly lost the front end of the Lola.
Yeah, he chopped him off a little bit there. Race is getting in the waning laps, and Redman is going to have to make his move. John Paul could conceivably hold him off for the entire race if he makes that blocking maneuver into turn 9 every time, because he has an edge in most of the places.
Wow, look at him square off the corners. I didn't think he could square off a corner like that. Here comes the move, and he makes it stick. Brian Redman now has taken over the lead in the Lola, and Jean Paul is relegated to the 2nd place spot.
That isn't where I thought it would happen. That was coming out of turn 7 that he made that move. He faded underneath him. He used the handling, I would say, of the Lola to cut the turn a little sharper. John Paul went wider. That was a nice move on Brian's part. For somebody to come from 7th to lead one of these races with all the powerful Porsches and their tactics, their horsepower, what have you, for Redman to be in the lead at this point in the race is an incredible show.
Especially with, is this not the debut of this car?
It's the very first race it's ever run in its life.
They're not supposed to win first time out.
No, they aren't, but Brian's done a lot of testing. This is his baby. He almost conceived of this car. It was designed by Eric Broadley, but it was almost Brian Redman's idea from the start. And there you see him get the checkered flag, and Brian Redman wins the first GTP category in the history of IMSA.
The Lola just kind of drove along very evenly throughout the race and just didn't win by being super fast, but it went the same speed at the end of the race as it did at the beginning of the race, which nobody else could do. And I think that was a function of the aerodynamics, the type of car it was, purpose-built race car instead of built on a shell.
So all those pieces came together, and I think when it was over, everybody kind of went, huh, we didn't really maybe expect that, but it is what we expected. This car met its design mark first time out of the box perfectly.
That inaugural victory for the T-600 turned many in the IMSA paddock into believers in the GTP concept. In classic win on Sunday, sell on Monday fashion, 3 T-600 chassis were sold after that inaugural triumph. Those first cars went to John Paul Racing, Ted Field's Interscope Racing, and California racer Chris Cord. That Laguna victory was the first of 3 straight and 5 total triumphs for Redman and chassis HU1. Combined with 5 more runners-up finishes, Redman and Lola cruised to the first GTP championship. Suffice to say, Lola was saved, and GTP was here to stay.
From that point on, it just grew, and I don't know how many of them things they built, but, they had Porsche motors in them, they had Chevy motors in them, the same thing. You could stuff all kinds of engines in the back of these things, same with the Marches, with Buicks and V6 Chevys, turbos, and so it just created an eye-opener for everybody to go, oh, this might work pretty good.
In fact, 11 of the T-600s were built and raced in the United States and Europe using a multitude of power plants. The car was also the base chassis for the Corvette GTP project. And from 1981 to 1993, Lola T-600s claimed 12 wins and 37 podiums in 123 races started.
It worked better than anybody expected, but when it was done, everybody did kind of feel like, well, that's what we wanted it to do, and it did exactly what we wanted it to do. It's perfect.
Thanks to their 1981 success at Laguna Seca, Brian Redman and the Lola T-600 will forever be racing icons. We hope you've enjoyed episode 1 of Racing Icons. Look for the second episode coming soon, featuring the car many think was the most influential of all prototypes, the Porsche 962. As always, if you have been, thank you very much for watching.